Unemployed and Afraid acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on and of the land where you, the listener, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and extend our respect to any First Nations, Aboriginal, and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, acknowledging that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the messy middle of being out on your own and starting over with the people who've done it. I'm your host, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into today's story of starting over. Here we are. Welcome back to another episode of Unemployed and Afraid, where we get to unpack the stories of starting over with the generous humans who share them and uncover what it's like to create a new career for yourself. For today's guest, the fabulous Polly Teller from Wobble Yoga and Scream Pretty Australia, it was the looming change in a contracting magazine environment that made her realise that the need to change was pretty well imminent. But the idea itself seeded and grew over time. Now, you'll love Polly for so many reasons, but particularly for her beautiful honesty and vulnerability about the messy middle and the surprising learnings she's had along the way, including going backwards in her career to lay the path to go forward. And we talk about how easily you can try to talk yourself out of doing something for fear that it already exists in some other form, it's not innovative enough, or that no one will want it, and why you should pretty well put all of those thoughts right in the bin where they belong. Plus the difficult thing that no one really digs into on the journey, the weirdness that you feel when you realize how much of your identity was attached to what you do and what to do and who you are once that's changed. Now, it is an adult pod by a couple of pretty sweary adults. So this is your swear warning. And we do touch on the debilitating challenges of anxiety as well. So if this episode is not for you, that's perfectly fine. And I hope to see you back in another week. That's enough introing. Let's get into it. Today's guest knows a lot about the challenging and sometimes uncomfortable world of trying new things. And irony not lost, given her business venture provides relaxation sanctuaries. I am joined by the fabulous Polly Teller, creator of Wobble Yoga and so much more. Wobble Yoga started with a new yoga mat and nowhere to put it, which led Polly to create beautiful and environmentally ethical yoga practice supports like her roomy yoga mat bags, Shavasana eye pillows, practice blocks, meditation pillows, and the most beautiful bolsters. I have my green velvet bolster that Polly created sat right behind me at the moment, which is a bloody lifesaver after long days at the computer. Polly has a fabulous career full of glorious twists and turns and a brilliant outlook on yoga and life. As she says, yoga practice never makes perfect. Smile as you nearly topple over. Amen to that. Polly, welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'll be doing better when we later on when we finish up and I can lean back over my bolster and just heart open and just feel fantastic. But doing good, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you today. Let's start our chat with a little bit of an icebreaker, just to get us into it. Tell me, how would your daughter Viva describe you?
Gosh, how would she describe me? She's at that stage where she's very loving, so she'd probably say that she loves me very much, but she'd probably describe me as fun, strict, and a bit pushy.
Oh, I love that. What sort of rules do you have for her to make you strict?
I do give her chores and I do make her do her homework and it really foster her to be an independent woman, actually. So I do. One of the biggest rules that I have for her is not to be afraid, actually, which kind of feeds into this chat, is that I said, if you're scared, then you have to do it. And that's why you do it. And I'm really annoyingly pushy on that one, actually.
Oh, I love that one. What a good thing. I mean, great to be doing it at that age, because when we get a little bit older, we're like, I'm an adult. I can talk myself out of having to do hard things.
Yeah, exactly. You got to. I firmly believe in it. It's one of my major beliefs is don't let fear hold you back. You just got to go for it. And I couldn't bear it if she was scared of the ocean or scared of spiders. I'm like, come on.
Can all do with a little bit of that in our life. So let's go back to before Wobble Yoga was born. Who were you back then?
Who was I? I was very much self-identified as a magazine photo editor.
V-glam.
V-glam. at some points, VV glam, living in New York City, wearing high heels, coffee in hand, BlackBerry buzzing, thought I was living my dream.
Sounds pretty fab.
Yeah, it was fab, hugely well paid, launching national magazines in the US and back to London and working on prestige titles, and had a lot of success, and there was awards, there was the ability to jump ship and work on all the titles I kind of wanted to work on and stuff like that. That was great. Life was pretty sweet, actually. A lot of girlfriends who were very successful as well, and career was 100% my ambition in life, was to be a successful career woman.
Did you think that your career as a picture editor would last forever while you were in that space?
Initially, when I first started, I'm late 40s now, so 27 years ago, magazines was a viable career option. You know what I mean? It was like, yeah, that's a growing industry, and they were, especially in London, there was titles launching left, right, and centre, and it seems very vibrant, and it was fantastic. And I guess I did think it would be. Was I thinking about a job for life? No, I was thinking about the foreseeable future where I could have a fun career. Yes, and I guess I didn't foresee that 20 years down the line that career would be not an option anymore. So yeah,
that makes sense. When did it become not an option anymore?
Well, obviously there are still some magazines around, but I think the rot sort of set in. I had lived and worked in New York City, came back to London to work specifically for the Sunday Times, and it was a big job. I was very excited by it, and I was in this cocoon of this huge corporation. But I did sort of notice left, right, and that there was less launches going on beyond the huge News Corps. And then after about 3 or 4 years of working there was a few rounds of redundancy, and then you kind of go, oh right, it's contracting. And then it just happened in a massive rush. Suddenly we were on 4 floors, then we were on 2 floors, and then we were on 1 floor. Departments went from like 20 to like down to 4, and that happened really quickly. And then so you knew, like, obviously shit, what's my exit plan? And that thought about, I'm going to have to do something different, was a long time ago, and making the actual change to do something different took bloody forever. But I was also in a position where I still had the job, I still had holiday pay, I had a real cushy number. So it was like, oh shit, what do I do? Do I jump ship now, or do I just hold on till it sinks? So, the reason why I say that is because, like, some people are like, oh my God, you're so brave to do so many different things. And it's like, nah, but this has been percolating for a long time, like knowing that I'd have to make drastic changes against my will. I'd probably still do that job if I could, if I could do it from home, if I could do it part-time, or if there was flexibility around, childcare and stuff, I probably still would be doing it.
You went to study business at evening school, we chatted about before. When did that come about, and why did that come about?
That came about around that time I'm sort of talking about, when I started to think, I think I need to learn other things.
That would have been a big project to take on.
I don't think I'd had my daughter yet then, or had I? I don't think so. I think it was just before I became pregnant. I was thinking, I want to start my own business. I think that's something I'd like to do, or at least know about business, at least understand what is everything, because you're so cocooned in the corporate world. You just get paid a salary, and I didn't know anything about tax or anything. And so I had decided to go to this evening class in the middle of London and learn about small business. My dad had run his own business for many years, and I remember thinking it looked like quite a good way to live your life. And so I was like, just turn up and see what I can learn. And it was fascinating. And I did think it was a 3-month course or something, and I learned, like, it wasn't so much of the things I learned in that class, it was more learning to think about the future, realizing it was easy, I was going to be able to do it. Like, it was not beyond me. I was like, yeah, I could smash this if I wanted to. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm going to be like the biggest businesswoman in the world, but I thought, yeah, I could get it. I understand this.
Yeah, well, you never know, first of all, about being the biggest businesswoman in the world. Who knows what's around the corner? But it's so great to invest in those skills, because you're right. When we're going into anything or imagining any kind of a change, it's such a steep mountain to climb where to even get started. We're so blessed to have access to so many courses and mentors and amazing people out there. It's so good to invest in those skills.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I don't know why, but I think I've known other people do the same thing, is they think, I've got to retrain to do something else. I've got to go back to uni. And you look up going back to university and you're like, hold on, have I got 3 years to go back to university? Like, maybe I need to not do that. Maybe I need to learn. And I also need to pay my rent or my mortgage or whatever. Like, I can't go back to university. Like, what do? I have to do it in the evening or do it. And then you get into this trap of thinking you have to. Obviously you do if it's medicine or something proper, but with business I realized, I could teach myself this on the side, and that was always the plan, using things like evening class, but so many online resources. I was like, I don't need to go back to uni to do this. I can do it whilst I still work. So
that's so brilliant. And what happens after business school?
I carried on working at the Sunday Times. So I had my daughter. I had my surprise daughter arrived, and then motherhood just took over. And on my maternity leave, I was so bad at she was so good at sleeping and I was so bad at relaxing that I was like, I'm going to start a business now. And I sort of went down the line of trying to launch. I didn't do it. I knew I wasn't going to do it, but I pretended I was going to sort of launch this line of baby wear, I remember. And I knew I wasn't going to do it, but it was very interesting. I did logos and I started like pretending I was going to launch that, knowing that that wasn't the product, and also knowing quite quickly from having my daughter that I didn't want to live in London anymore. So I was like, well, I'm not going to start a business and then leave the country. But I had that in my head, like, okay, I'm practice running this process. And then saved up a lot of money whilst I was still working. It was hideous. Had a young child. I mean, I did get paid maternity leave. I was still in that cushy corporate world. Like, people were amazed, but I had like 9 months paid maternity leave.
Wow.
Yeah. During which time, I mean, it's incredible. During which time I had a lot of time to read and evaluate my life and know that I didn't want to be the kind of mum that picked my daughter up. That dropped her off in the morning and picked her up when it was dark, dropped her off when it was dark. Because that's the reality in London. Like, you put her in a nursery and she maybe is going to be asleep when you pick her up and you put her straight to bed. I was like, that seems terrible. If I'm going to, if I'm going to have a kid, like, I kind of like to see her. And knew I'd have to change my career because of the long hours and everything like that. So again, that was the next thing. Like, the career was declining. And then I became a mum and I was like, oh, I really am going to have to do something different now.
So the family got on a plane and ended up in a beautiful Bondi Beach in Australia. That's a spot to land.
Yeah. We landed in Adelaide first to see family.
My hometown.
Yeah. To see my partner's family. And then I still had to think, live properly. I mean, I did fancy living in Sydney anyway, to be honest. But I needed to be somewhere that I could possibly work. And Sydney was the only real place in Australia at the time that had a viable publishing industry. So Bondi Beach, here we come. Yeah.
And so were you working in publishing when you came to Sydney? What was that work like?
Well, I did the thing that a lot of people back home, when I was leaving, they were like, oh, you're going to Australia, which isn't abnormal for Brits to go to Australia. Oh, where are you going? You've got a job? No, I don't have a job. Oh, does your partner have a job? No, he doesn't. And how old is your daughter? Oh, 2. Oh, that sounds like a sensible plan. I was like, well, yeah, we've got some savings and it's going to be fine. And turned up and he got a job pretty quickly in an industry that is now dead as well. He used to work in publishing as well, in print publishing. And I got here and applied for quite a few jobs, none of which I really wanted to do. I was like, oh,
the half-hearted cover letter.
Yeah, all of that. And like, damn, are they going to? And then went to a few interviews, and they were decent jobs, but they weren't really, they weren't that interesting to me. But I went along, and then all of them were like, so we tend to work quite long hours and weekends. And I was like, I can't do that. I've got a 2-year-old child. Like, I can't work weekends. I don't want to work weekends. What can I do? And so then sort of fell into this freelancing gig, which was horrific, because freelancing and being a mum with childcare that's $150 a day was like total recipe for a huge amount of anxiety and not very much money. Really bad. But I did work in the Sydney publishing industry for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and I had a good enough time, but it was pretty depressing to be doing the roles of like things that I had done, a long time ago in my career, and people suddenly didn't know who I was and didn't know my career history, and would, without meaning to, would say things to me, and I'd be like, wow, you can't be rude and say, have you seen my CV? You can't say that. But you do sort of feel like, oh, it's like kills my soul to be so condescended, but also by people much younger, and you're just like, fucking hell, this is terrible. I hate it. I don't want to do this anymore, but had absolutely no firm plan about what I was going to do. No money. And then you become quite sort of paralyzed at that stage in the process of changing your life. I found was the worst. That was the messy middle. I read that you talked about. That was the messiest phase. I was on my own in the country with no family, very few friends, few of who we have in common actually. Very, very few friends, no support system whatsoever. This was all by my own design, and pretty bad income. Huge costs, and just raging anxiety. And having that rate, and I'd never suffered from anxiety in my life before, ever. I'd always been like, I don't understand why people are making such a fuss about things, like totally unsympathetic. And I suddenly realized how fucking debilitating anxiety is. And I was like, I think am I depressed? I'm not depressed. And then like Googling it, going, I think I'm anxious. I think this is anxiety. Like, so crippling in terms of like making those important decisions. You can't make those important decisions because you're so riddled, like paralyzed with anxiety.
Yeah.
And all I could really do was just make sure my daughter was okay, try and keep my relationship together, because without that, everything is going to be fucked up. So I was like gripping onto things and trying to see the beauty in the day and trying to kind of keep it together. And that's when I started to go to yoga. I'd never really done yoga before, and that became my saving grace. That was the beginning of the journey out of, first of all, the anxiety, but also the journey into the change.
Yoga really does teach you to so much more than what might be advertised from an exercise perspective. I mean, it's great to feel good in your body and feel strong, but the ability to sit with the discomfort in poses and your own brain through the yoga practice, and those little incremental elements of growth that you experience when your heart starts to literally and figuratively open up, and you find those moments of pause in the day. It's life-changing stuff.
For me it was. And I've, as I explained, was quite an urban, not very woo-woo person, like quite corporate and quite sort of pragmatic in my approach to everything. And then suddenly I found myself lying on a wooden floor surrounded by 25 strangers, but having these moments of like real enlightenment of going, okay, it's okay. And then just like feeling like this freedom in my chest as I was lying back with my eyes shut and listening to the yoga teachers say these, like, the yoga philosophy that you're very familiar with, but like I was not familiar with this stuff. And I was like, yes, that makes so much sense. Like almost, and I actually cried in a yoga class. I actually fucking cried. I was like, oh my God, what happened to me? Who am I?
Can I tell you, when I did my yoga teacher training, I think I cried every second day through that process. I was just public crying and, try to write things down, and like little tears falling and be like, yes, I feel so seen. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to unpack. It's beautiful.
And I let myself kind of go. I was like, and I think part of the good thing about putting yourself through these huge changes is that you stop being, how old was I then? I was like early 40s. And I think it's really easy at that sort of age to say, this is who I am now. I like this. This is what I do. This is my favorite kind of music. And you box yourself into this kind of identity. And the other thing that was very important around that time is that I didn't have that identity of being successful Polly who lived in New York and had lots of money and a nice car. I didn't have that. And I also didn't have, suddenly I was a mum walking around Bondi with an anorak on a rainy day. I was like, fuck, like, I don't know. It's all a bit like, I was very confused as to who I was. I was very confident in myself. Like, I've always liked my brain and my ability to get through life, but I was really lost. I was really lost. And going into this idea of going to be a yogi, I would have fully laughed at somebody talking about that a few years before. I'd have been like, oh my God, are you fucking joking? Like, what? Just go to a spin class, get it over and done with, Yeah. And then all of a sudden I was like, I think I'm quite into it. And I just threw myself into that world and suddenly decided I could be more of a yogi.
I love that. And when did the idea for Wobble start to see? Take me back to that moment.
I think, when things happen organically, you kind of know it's probably a good thing. I made the commitment to become a member at a yoga studio, and they were like, yeah, you can bring your own mat, but if you want to leave your mat here, you've got to have it in a bag, and you can buy one of our bags. And I was a bit like, I could do, and it was like, it was expensive and I didn't like it. I was like, if I'm going to spend $50 on a yoga mat bag, I didn't have $50 spare then, to be honest. And I was a bit like, I'll get my own, and walked back with my heavy mat and thought, okay, I got to get a bloody bag sorted out. And had recently found a sewing machine on the street, because I was big into street gold at that stage.
How good is the street gold in Bondi?
I know.
There's some great things.
I had my whole flat at that stage was like, not the whole flat, but a lot of the flat was street gold. Anyway, I thought, well, maybe I'll try and make a bag. And I had done sewing in the past. My mum I'd been brought up in the kind of deeply middle class bohemian lifestyle of my mum making all of our clothes, and it was wonderful. So I did have an idea how to do it, and I thought, well, I'll just make myself a bag, and I wanted it to be big, and I wanted to be able to put my phone, and I wanted to be able to sip my coffee and like put my keep cup in the bag when I'd finished with it. Like, I had this idea of what I wanted. And I did used to walk every morning. So it was something that was definitely in my mind. I'd thought the design concepts of what I want. Pretty simple, but I knew what I wanted to do. And then it was along those walks to yoga and back through the sort of back alleys of Bondi that I was like, maybe I should do something to do with yoga, because I love yoga. I'm inspired by it. And I didn't want to do leggings. I didn't want to do, apparel. But I wanted to do something bit different, and I'd looked into the economics of the industry and seen that yoga was on an upward trajectory. It was a growing industry, and I was like, because I can't throw myself into another sinking, contracting industry. It has to be something that's growing. And I spoke to a friend of mine that is a pretty successful entrepreneur, and he said, just make a load of bags, set up a website, and sell them. And I was, it took a couple of minutes, and I was like, who's going to want yoga mat bags? I don't think I need something innovative. I need something like, there needs to be the next Uber. It needs to be like,
Don't we always think that?
Yeah, like it needs to be something
big and guaranteed so that we can feel safe. Yes, I understand.
And then I was like, maybe my aims are a bit high here. and maybe I'll just do that for fun. And that is what happened. I literally just took I was like, that's it. So I needed somebody to tell me what to do, basically. And I just said, okay, I'll do that. And I bought a load of fabric and made a load of bags, like 40 bags, something like that, 40 or 50 bags with all these really nice colors. And I tried to make sure that every element of the bag was recycled or found or upcycled, something like that. So, because I didn't want it, if it's going to be a handmade item, I wanted it to be a bit bespoke and a bit, characterful, something I'd want to use. But not tie-dye, not like really, really ethnic-y. I wanted it to have a bit of like contemporary flair to it. So it was all bright colours and all the thread is the neon. I liked them. I thought they were nice. And then I built myself a website. And that was the fun bit, actually. Yeah. The making it wasn't, I still make a heap of things, but really it was the website that I got quite excited about. And the branding and the marketing, and I was like, oh, this is so much fun, I love it. I was extremely excited by the project, and then I knew I was on the right path. I didn't know if the product was the right product, but I knew it was worth pursuing because I could feel it. It was like this joy welling up, and I was like, oh my God, that's really interesting. I can't wait to read about this.
Yes. It's funny the things you get stuck into, isn't it, when you're on this journey. I've watched that many YouTube tutorials on different software platforms and loved it. Be like, what's happened?
Yeah, I know. I was like, yes, Java. I'm going to learn all about coding. Oh my God, I can do this now. And
that is commitment.
I mean, I'm definitely not a coder, but I did learn a bit, enough to be able to correct mistakes and just like know what it was, the basics. And and that was fun. And I remember saying to the same guy he was like, how's it going? Have you done the website? And I was like, well, I think I'm going to press launch on it. But I'm a bit worried I haven't got enough stock. Hilarious. And he just looked at me and he was like, have you been advertising? I'd be like, no, I haven't been advertising.
Don't we just think the army is going to come and buy?
And then sort of, press launch on the Shopify. That's the platform I use. I'm a big, fan of it. And obviously nothing. It was like crickets. And I was like, oh, what do I do now then? Like, how do I make people buy them? And that was the next learning curve, was advertising marketing. So I'd never done that before. But it was very easy for me to transfer my skills. So it wasn't like learning, a load of, like going into medicine or something and having to learn everything from scratch. For me, it was just a transferal of skills I already knew. I knew everything about how to make images and tell a story, refine headlines, all of that journalistic stuff. And you could apply that so much to marketing, I realized.
So true.
And advertising, I was like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. And I'm not going to employ anybody to do it either. I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah, it's important when you're starting out as well. That's so important, isn't it? Just kind of wait and see, and to kind of necessarily afford those big agencies. When did your first sale come through, and how was that?
Well, it was quite very quickly after I decided to do Facebook and Instagram advertising. And I was like, my budget was laughable, but I just put a few, I think it was like $10 or $15 a day. I did created my own audiences, and anybody who's ever made a Facebook ad will understand. You just, there's a bit of back end stuff, jiggery pokery that you have to learn how to do. And I had an ad running, just going out to people that maybe were interested in yoga in Australia. And I think I set it running on the Friday, and then on Sunday morning I was in the kitchen and I heard this ka-ching on my phone, and I was like, what's that notification? And then I saw it was a sale, and I was like, what? And I was literally jumping around. I was going, and my partner was like, what's wrong now? I was like, no. And she'd actually bought 2 bags. It was like a 2-bag sale, and she was somewhere in Queensland. And I was like, oh my God. And then I panicked. I was like, oh, are the bags good enough? Shit. So I was like, fuck, this is actually real now. I'm sending products. But I had prepared myself. I knew how I was going to, package it. But that was it. That was the first sale. It was hilarious. I was so excited.
I would have been too. Did you hold your breath a little bit as you sent it off? You're like, am I going to hear back from her? Where is my product in the world?
Oh, I mean, I fully Google mapped, it's like a stalker. I was like, it's her house. I wonder if she does yoga there or a local studio. I mean, I just down that rabbit hole. No, she didn't send them back. I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything back good or good.
Isn't that hard sometimes?
Yeah.
Are you happy with it? Tell me what you think.
Yeah. And I did think that for a long time, because after that, I started getting quite a few sales, actually. It wasn't that hard, at that stage. And I was still working. So I wasn't relying on that money. Mm-hmm. That was by design. That was very much, and also something I would, if you possibly can, I would advise to, not take out loans, not, be in not spend $20,000 on a video, or, it's okay. You can start incrementally. And to me, I knew that if I had taken on debt or a loan, I just couldn't deal with it. I'm debt averse, I'm risk averse, and financially, which isn't always a good thing for an entrepreneur. But for me, I was honest with myself. I was like, I'm not going to sink loads of money into this. I need to just learn. And then I'll grow. I'm not in a hurry. I'm not thinking I'm going to get rich quick. It's more about, I want to learn the process and get paid small amounts along the way to learn. And that's what I did.
I think that's great advice, as in making sure that you don't take on too much too soon, and really looking at where the desire to do so comes from. I can find in my own experience, you want to see yourself on the other side where the business venture, whatever that may be, is successful, explainable to others. You've got on paper success in all the markers of success financially that comes along with a new venture, and you're in such a hurry sometimes. I speak for myself, such a hurry sometimes to get to the end goal when you're a published author or a high selling creator or whatever it is, that you just would do anything to get there. But they're often, for some people maybe that might be their journey to have an investor, but for many of us, it's just about try and see and put little bits in. As you get a few dollars in, you put a few dollars back in, and it's just slow, and a little bit painful, sometimes a little bit ugly, until you get through that and can look on it retrospectively.
Yeah, I absolutely so happy I did it that way. But I think also for me, I always knew that I needed to make it, I needed to make it viable. And there was a lot of financially viable, because the work was going to dry up. It just literally was. Magazines were folding left, right, and center. It was like, I think at one stage I was applied to have a job at Flight Centre. There was absolutely nothing wrong with people who work at Flight Centre, but it's a pretty low paid job. But I knew that I could. They were saying that you could do flexible hours. I just needed something that was flexible hours, and this kind of, meant a lot of my journey was, as I've said, has been fueled by this being a mum who wanted to see her kid. And I wanted to be a working mum. I always wanted to be a working mum. But the idea of, when it doesn't work, it doesn't make sense. This idea of being in an office from 9 to 6 and having kids and having two parents working, it literally doesn't work. There's literally not enough holiday days for your annual leave for the kids being off school. And I realized, I was like, this is like proper square peg round hole situation. I need to make something flexible. And I applied for the Flight Centre job, and I didn't get the job, which made me laugh so much. I was like, oh my God, I can't even get a job in a call centre. What the fuck am I going to do?
So those little moments are gifts. They keep you going on to the next path, which actually, in, of course, researching you and your incredible path, is this around the time the other business venture came in, the beautiful Scream Pretty jewelry brand? How did that happen?
I was still working. Actually, I was working at some lovely titles at that time. I was working at Marie Claire and In Style, which was fun. It was part-time. It was actually a really enjoyable gig, even though we all could literally see the end of the industry coming. And I had pre-pandemic, I had been home to London, and I have lots of holes in my ear. and have done for a long time, wear lots of jewelry. And one of my oldest friends, who I've known for forever, I met her. I was like, hi, how you doing? And we talked about business many years ago when I went to business school, and she just started a business, as she used to be in TV. And so she made a big jump when she became a mum, way before me. And she was like, oh, I've got an idea for you. And her business was hugely successful at that point. It was gangbusters because they were doing massive trade in China at that stage. And she was employing like 20 people. She was employing her husband, her sister. She was like this hugely successful business owner. And which is funny, because you're somebody you've known for a long time. You're just like, oh my God, you've done really well, babe. And she was just like, I've got an idea for you. Would you think about, launching the brand in Australia? And I was like, oh, I wouldn't have never considered it. And she was like, well, you obviously know how to run a business with Wobble, and you know how to do online marketing and run the Shopify platform and do all of this different stuff. So do you want to do it? Do you want to do the jewelry as well? And I was like, and it just instantly thought, yeah, I do. I don't have to make it. I just have to market it and fulfill it. And I knew how to do it pretty much.
That is so cool.
I was like, yeah. And then, I was a bit nervous about taking on so much. And at one stage I was working 4 days a week, being a mum to a kindy. She was in kindy at that stage, I think, and having 2 businesses. It was a lot. It was a lot.
And part of the yogi pun, there's got to be at least one. But how did you balance it all at that stage? And now, how has that changed?
How did I balance it? At that stage, I did a lot of lunchtime reading. I pushed it when I was a freelancer. I would, you'd get given an hour, and I would spend that hour working on my other businesses. I'd either do all what I needed to do in that hour, or if I was on the train or the bus, I would do a lot of work. You can do a lot of stuff on the phone. I'd get up really early, really fucking early, go to yoga, come back, do like an hour and a half, 2 hours of work whilst making breakfast and making sure she had all the stuff for her school in her school bag, and then go to work, and then on the way come back, get her sorted out, and then when she went to bed, I would do more work. So it's a lot of work.
Wow, it is a lot of work. And is that still happening now? Is that Are they both keeping you just as busy, or is it
no? Life's completely different, and I'm now at that stage in the journey where I am living the dream that I wanted to be living. Like, I'm not a millionaire. I'm not rolling in dollars. Financially, they've both been successful, and I think I was talking to a friend, and I was like, are you going to be around in January for school holidays? And she was like, no, I'm going to take January off. I'm going down to my house on the South Coast. And I was like, oh my God, like, you're going to take January off? Who takes January off? Like, I was absolutely blown away by it. And then she said, oh, well, business is slow in January, so I just put myself on light duties. She runs her own business, I should say. And I was like, oh, interesting concept. And with school holidays as well, I've got a child all the time, like 24/7. I was like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to put her in a succession of different holiday camps, which is what I normally do? And that's extremely expensive, and they're all finished at 3 anyway. So you're paying somebody $150, $200 a day to go to gymnastics for 6 hours. They're like, or maybe I think of a different approach. And yeah, that's what I did. I took January off pretty much. I put my businesses on a sale, like a lot of other businesses, put it at a sale running. And I had the same marketing and the same messaging going for a month, pretty much. And I fulfilled the orders in the morning, took me about an hour and a half. And then I went off and went to the beach and hung out with my daughter, and was basically ignored by her and her friends for most of the day, and would check, if a customer inquiries came through, I would reply on my phone whilst I was wherever I was. That was it. I was like, I'm doing it. It's happening. Woo! This is
you
it.
got there.
Yeah, I got there. And
so
I was making money every day. I wasn't, obviously, it wasn't peak, because December and November are my peak anyway. And yeah.
How exciting. And what do you see for Wobble in the future? How would you like it to evolve, and how would you like yourself to evolve alongside of it?
Well, Wobble has to change. My whole business model has to shift, and I've known it's had to shift for about a good 18 months. But it's been so busy that to make huge business changes when you're still working on your own is so hard, because you're busy running the business. To change the business is also scary. I have to basically make the decision to get most of my products made elsewhere, offshore or somewhere else, but not by me. And so it has to kind of stop being a handmade business at this stage, because it's literally not viable anymore. And also, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to try a different model for Wobble. But that means another whole phase of learning. And there is definitely a part of me that was like, have I got the energy for that? Because, with the pandemic and everything, it was more just like, we were busy, like online businesses were very busy, which is great. And, I didn't foresee that. Nobody did. But I was very, very busy through lockdown. And now that things are kind of evening out, I have to do that. I have to muster up the energy to contact manufacturers and speak to people in Bali and India. Try and find, what I'm trying to do is trying to find an ethical manufacturing process, which is obviously making things difficult for myself. But I'm sure that's what I want to do. I can't be employing some, child in Bangladesh to make a bolster cover. Like, it's never going to work for me. Even though a lot of people sell product like that, that's not worth it for me. I'd rather not. I'd rather not sell it. So that's what's happening with Wobble. And for me, I just want, funnily enough, like we were talking, this whole journey was about how yoga kind of facilitated this huge change in my life without me losing my mind. And only recently, when we had the option to go back to yoga studios, I've actually not really opted to go back to doing much yoga. It's almost as if I don't need it in the same way that I used to. And I've been doing Pilates and weight training, and I did bar attack and like virtually fell over. Like, it's just funny. Like, I've been trying different things because I feel free and I feel lighter and I want to get strong. And I almost as if I don't need that kind of anti-anxiety situation anymore. But I still go to yin yoga every Sunday religiously.
Isn't it just the most beautiful experience?
Yeah. So I don't actually do the vinyasa practice. I just do the yin.
It evolves with you, and that's the thing. It's it can be a daily practice for some time. It can be an occasional practice. It's more the lessons that it teaches you, regardless of the physical benefits of the practice. The ability to sit in whatever you're feeling, the ability to recognize growth and what's coming next is the thing that yoga really gives you. I know I've been getting into tennis more than yoga lately, which is very different, and totally different muscles. I hurt every single day at the moment, but that's because I'm really enjoying that sort of more social experience. I went quite inward, I think, as many people did through the pandemic, just to kind of sit in my own feelings and spend a lot of time quietly in yoga. Things just change, in business and in life and in yoga. You go with what feels right in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say, I went to a yin yoga class on Sunday at a yoga studio I used to go to a long time ago, obsessively. And I turned up and there was the same teacher, and she was like, "Oh, Polly, how are you?" And I was like, "Oh, it's lovely to see you. How are you doing?" And she was like, "Oh, I'm just starting a retreat. I need 15 bolsters and 15 eye pillows. Do you think you could do that for me?" I was just like, oh my God, like a couple of years ago, I would have been absolutely thrilled. I've been frothing with joy that somebody would have, offered me that work. And I literally lay down on my bolster and I was just like, oh, fuck. That means I'm going to have to make 15 bolsters and 15 eye pillows, and I can't say no. And it just made me laugh how far, my reactions and my processes have come. It's funny. It's good. it's a great problem to have, being busy.
And they are beautiful. Your bolsters, your eye pillows are just gorgeous. So, Polly, how can the listener and I support you on your journey with Scream Pretty, with Wobble, with your future endeavours? What can we do for you?
What can you do for me? You can have a look, see if you like something, and buy something. No, I mean, what can you do? Just, I don't know. With my business, it's just about customers, right? So if customers like something, you want them to come back. So have a look, see if there's something you can gift yourself or gift somebody or just learn from my journey. Maybe do your own thing.
I love that. That's great advice. I'm going to make sure that I have the links to Wobble Yoga, of course, your website, your Instagram, all of the links to all of the things that we've chatted about today, so that the listener can go and support you on your journey. Because when we're doing anything in life, that community around us that supports and props us up, again, pardon the yoga pun, that's another one.
Yeah.
But anything that helps us keep going, it's super important. It's the journey of change can be a little isolating at times. So it's nice to get out there and support each other. Polly, it's been such a joy to hear your story. I'm so pleased that you took all of the risks that you've taken in life to bring you to this point where you're able to create the kind of life that you feel really happy living in. And it's and I appreciate you being so open and so vulnerable about the challenges along the way. I'm just happy to see you at the other side. It has been such a pleasure to chat with you today.
Same.
Let's do it again when you launch your next business.
You never know. I did have an idea the other day, just saying.
Seriously, how cool is it that you just never know what is just around the corner, or how the spark of maybe a bit of an idea could lead to something pretty epic? And if you're loving the pod, maybe you could take a few minutes to leave a star rating and review. I read every single one of them, and the fact that you've made the effort to do so means the absolute world. You can always follow at Unemployed and Afraid on Insta and Facebook for more goodies, and of course, to stay in touch. I hope your day is wonderful. Thank you for being here, and see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the stories of starting over with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you liked the episode and are keen to hear more, please hit the follow button and leave a review. And let's keep the conversation going on Instagram at Unemployed and Afraid, where there's more goodies and links to today's show notes. See you there.